Welcome to the Pitching Film and Television panel. I'm Doug Eboch. I'm a screenwriter. I'm probably best known for writing the movie Sweet Home Alabama. Thank you. And I co-wrote the Hollywood Pitching Bible.
Yes.
With this gentleman, Ken Aguado, right here, who I'll introduce in a minute. But that's why I'm moderating this panel. All right, so let me introduce our panelist. And I will start with Ken, since I already mentioned his name. So Ken has been working in Hollywood for over 30 years as a studio executive, producer, and screenwriter. He produced The Salton Sea and wrote An Interview with God, and he's co-author of the Hollywood Pitching Bible, as well as several other books.
Great.
Next to him is Karen Stillman, who's a television writer whose credits include, actually feature writer as well, but credits include The Assets and Smokescreen. She's sold pitches to a whole bunch of networks and production companies. I won't list them all. But she most recently created the pilot The Pill for TriStar Television. So that's Karen. Next to her is Spiro Skentzos, who moderated the previous panel, so you've already seen his wonderful work if you were here at 10:30. So he's a TV writer whose credits include Arrow, Grimm, Chatham, and George Lopez. Or was it the George Lopez Show? I don't remember what.
It's called George Lopez.
George Lopez? Okay, so George Lopez. I stand by that. All right, and then down at the end there, we have Joe Blotevogel, who has over 25 years of experience writing and producing TV. It's hard to believe you guys are, I've only had like 2 years. I don't know what's happening here. But from her first jobs in the dark theme, Crossing Jordan and the Dead Zone, to the blue skies and black holes of Eureka, Joe has always been drawn to genre, strong characters, and intrigue. In 2014, she created and served as showrunner for MTV's Scream the TV series. And since then, she's written for several high-profile spy shows, including Patriot, Berlin Station, and Echo 3. So, wide variety. I should also add her most recent series was Star's horror comedy Shining Vale, starring Courtney Cox, Greg Kinnear, and Mira Sorvino. So, pretty cool. And currently shopping a supernatural drama pilot, Beatrice Rue with Bedrock Entertainment, and writing the pilot script for The November Man, which is set to star Pierce Brosnan and produced by Legendary Entertainment. So, all right, to start off, Spiro was kind enough to send me a list of points of what he, in his class that he teaches on television writing, of what should be included in a pitch. So I thought maybe we would start there. Do you want to just kind of walk us through them? So this would be a television series pitch.
Yeah, this is mostly for TV series. I appreciate you mentioning that. Everyone around me has had amazing experience pitching, so they will be able to tell you what to do, really. But I can go through the titles, and then you can talk about whatever you want to do.
Sure. Why don't you just kind of go through a one sentence on each of the bullet points?
For me, for pitching, this is what I do in my pitching practice. This is what I teach when I teach at Loyola Marymount, number 5 screenwriting program. I'm going to be number 1 soon. And you need a log line. Who does what, once, when, and why? That's kind of like the moniker I use. The mnemonic I use is that for a log line. You need a hook and a conceit. How does your show stand out? A personal connection is really important. We can talk about that more later. And then you can start with a teaser to kind of you drop in on this scary moment and this is what happens, and then boom, and then you can pull back and talk about your world, the show, the characters and the character dynamics, the pilot story, the series, the tone, the theme, and then future episodes, and then you want to wrap it up. The wrap-up is kind of like the only time you do anything remotely salesy. Like, you're not a salesperson, you're a storyteller, you're sitting around a campfire. But the wrap-up is kind of like, in today's day and age, this is why we need the story, that type of thing. And this is mostly for TV because it talks about the series engine. But those are all the key things I think you need.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about, I think, because I imagine probably the first question on everybody's mind in here is, how do I get this meeting to pitch this TV show? So we're going to talk about that.
I'd like to know too.
Yeah, yeah. But I noticed that these things dovetail a lot with what we have in the Hollywood Pitching Bible. So to kind of also cover the feature side of things, since this is pitching film and television, Ken, do you want to, how would a feature pitch vary or be similar to this?
I think similar elements, other than the fact that motion pictures are meant to be closed-end and like an end, whereas TV shows, even when they know they're coming to an end, are pitched as if they're not coming to an end. I think that's probably the most. Obviously, you're not going to be coming up with with examples of additional possible episodes and whatnot, but it's pretty much, I would say, has the same elements, if just in different proportions.
So, and then I guess I'll not make you choose between yourselves. We'll start. Jill, how does this match up with how you pitch? Any variations or?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Spiro was saying, I always try and keep it a little simpler in my head, just the idea of like, if the log line is what makes this exciting, like this is what you're going to tell your friend, oh, it's a show about a little boy who's accused of murder in, England or whatever. So for me, it's like, it's that idea, and then it's, teaser, pilot, season. If I try and just keep it going from the big idea one-liner and then go micro, macro, 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 and you get less detailed as you get to the season. You pull them in and you engage them, you shake their hand, you give them a hug with your pilot. And then, yeah, like you were saying, with each of the characters, you talk a little bit about where they're going to go, how they're going to change, maybe who's going to betray who, and then kind of the big season one, finish that you're leading to. And then that hopefully kicks off. And then, of course, in season 2, it's going to switch around a little bit. Season 3, it'll switch to this. And then, let them know that you have a finish line in sight. And then, but they're still going to know that a lot of things are going to change between now and then, because, once again, that's what the writer's room is for. You come in with a really good outline. I mean, I called my corporation signpost up ahead because I like to have the signposts that I'm going to get to, but I know that a lot of people are going to help me figure out the journey.
Right. And I just want to kind of add my thought on like the importance of a log line in a pitch is one of the things is if you put yourself in the position of the person hearing the pitch, which I think is a good mental exercise to do, and you think about like...
And very difficult.
And very, yeah, as the producer and the studio executive, they probably, first of all, they most likely have no idea what you're going to pitch them. So they're sitting there trying to figure out, like, what is this thing? And if you kind of launch into sort of world building or something right off the top, they're sitting there figuring out, like, well, but what is this show? I don't understand. Or what is this movie? I think maybe this is almost more of a movie thing. But, like, giving them a log line gets you a little bit of comfort because now they understand, like, okay, I'm hearing a show about a boy who committed a murder in England. Now if you start diving into character or world building or all of that, like at least they understand why you're telling them that stuff.
And chances are they're going to have to pitch it to their higher-ups. And so if the first thing they can write down is a good, concise, here's what this story is, then that will make their higher-ups sit up and go, oh, I want a story like that, or tell me more.
Yeah, and
That's an interesting point, if I can jump in on that, what you said, because today, for those of you who get pitches and you're pitching, like, you're not pitching to the CEO, you're not pitching to, what's his name, who runs Amazon. Like, you're going to pitch to a director or vice president of that department. They have to pitch it to their senior VP, their EVP, the president of the company. Then who knows how many other people and some computer algorithm have to sign off on and that. So, like you were saying, the more you can bring them in, give them a handshake and a hug, and here's the story I'm going to tell you. And they know that this is a story about a little boy who kills someone in England. It's not a space show. It's not hospital drama. It's not that. But like we're dealing with maybe a period piece, and it's a kid and it's family. They have an idea of like, okay, I can wrap my head around that. So I'll sit back and you can tell me the story.
Yeah. Karen, any variations from our models?
I think I would just, can you hear me? I think I would just add, when you come in, it's really helpful if you have a personal connection. I think you mentioned this, but it's a good thing to start with. Here's how I found this story. Here's why I was drawn to this story. It sort of starts to pull people in a little bit, and I would also emphasize the teaser. I mean, my favorite moment in a pitch is when you pitch the teaser and you actually can watch them lean forward a little, and then you stop, and they kind of want to know what happens next, and then you know you're in a good spot. And if they lean back, you know you're not in a good spot. So having a good teaser is really helpful.
I'd like to reemphasize the personal connection again, and we'd love to hear more for your experience with this. But so I recently heard a friend of mine who is very successful, like EP. She is out pitching a lot of stuff. She's got like a whole team, and she recently said to me that the execs and the agents now are so insane about personal connections for material that it's bigger than ever. Like, why you? She said that there was something she would love to have written. It was a period piece, bank robbery, like all white guys robbing a bank, and she's a very successful, young black woman. And she's like, I'm not even gonna bother. Like, there's no way that as a black woman today, I would be like, I'm gonna write this period piece about these white guys robbing a bank. She's like, there are gonna be 100 white guys who probably have experience in, like, people, everyone has got things in their closet. Like, my dad was in jail for embezzlement. My dad, like, she's like, that's who it's gonna do. That's who's gonna do that story. So what makes you specifically the person to tell the story is something to really think about. I mean, sure, it can be like, it's me because it's my idea, that's why it's me, but like, what connects you to the story? Because that's what's gonna connect people to the story.
Jill, any thought on that?
Can I just interject? The term personal connection is a little bit misleading because it doesn't have to be autobiographically personal.
Right.
It is the introduction to almost every single pitch, and it sets the stage for the pitch, but it can accomplish any number of things. It really depends on what's difficult. The way I use it is, what's the difficult thing to explain about this idea, right? Something that wouldn't naturally be in the flow of a regular pitch, or would stop it cold in that way. So you want to get that information out in the front and out front, and when you do it properly, it really kind of does half the heavy lifting of selling a show. It makes that, or a show or a movie, right? If it's done right, you've done half the work of explaining why this show deserves to live, or why this movie deserves to live.
Anyone else want to add on? Because I feel like personal connection is a tough thing, partly because of that misperception, perhaps, that everything. Well, it's the this came up, Spiro, on your panel, like the advice of write what you know. Doesn't mean you have to only write things that happen to you, or there be no vampire stories or sci-fi, spaceship stories. So
Just the inspiration, especially with horror, you can grab someone with an eerie moment. And so for me, I wrote like a haunted house story set in the house that my mom grew up in like rural Illinois. And it's this big white house on a hill that always just scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. And so almost as, a cathartic experience, I set a horror story there and came up with this whole world. And I'm like, it all started when I was, 7 years old, trying to fall asleep in my grandma's house, and all you could hear is the crickets and it's taking something that is what maybe was a part of what made you want to become a writer and trying to get that across. Like, that's what I've put into this story.
yeah, because I do feel like every pitch is you're selling a story or an idea of some kind, but you're also selling yourself as the person that is the best person to write this. So sometimes personal connection, I think, can just mean insight into something. It doesn't mean you have to, have been a fireman to write a fireman story, but maybe you have some insight into the story that makes it personal to you, it makes it matter to you.
Also, I think sometimes it's what drew you to it, and it maybe didn't happen to you, but I sold something once because I literally told the story about how I was researching something else, and I came across this one article, and I went down this rabbit hole, and that the process of me going down the rabbit hole, I took the group with me down the rabbit hole. I learned this, and I told them a whole bunch of crazy facts that I learned down this rabbit hole, and then they wanted to know what all of these facts were. But it was sort of like, come with me on this experience, kind of a thing.
We're talking about passion, right? To show
Yeah.
people how passionate you are, like why you need to write this.
Yeah, and this may actually seg to a different topic. I was once having lunch with my agent, back when agents actually used to have lunch with their clients. I don't feel like that happens anymore, but I was going to bring him 10 ideas for spec scripts that I was interested in writing and have him kind of weigh in, because you want your agent behind you. And I mentioned this one, there's about an astronomer named Tycho Brahe, which, unless you're a scientist, you probably never heard of him, but I said, look, there was a book, maybe we could option the book, and he said, well, just tell me. And so I said, I got the idea because in my Astronomy 100 class in college, which I took for a general education requirement, the professor mentioned this astronomer who wore a fake gold and silver nose because his nose got cut off in a duel with another student over who was the better mathematician. And
I'm watching this movie.
This guy I want to know more about. And the more I found, it's the rabbit hole, the more I found out, like, this guy was just insane and crazy and had this crazy life and had a pet moose, all kinds of cool stuff. Look up Tycho Brahe, he's crazy. But my agent actually said, you should write that one. He said, forget the book, just write that spec. And he's like, you didn't think I was going to say that, did you? And I said, well, no, because it doesn't sound super commercial. And he goes, yeah, but I can tell you're passionate about it. In my experience, what people are passionate about is what usually sells. So the high concept stuff, maybe, but the passionate stuff always sells. So that's kind of, I think, why the personal connection, because it shows them that, like, you have a passion and they know that means that you're going to do a good job or you're going to do your best job on that. So I feel like we have to kind of deal with what to me is an elephant in the room, which is we're talking about pitching a new show, an original show. Like, how does one
new show.
get to that? Or just, a show that doesn't exist.
Not original.
Yeah. How does one ever get to that point that you're pitching that? Or what is a scenario where you're pitching a series?
Okay, well, I can. First of all, pitching used to be, the water bottle tour. You would go around to, studios or production companies physically. You'd get a bottle of water, so you're already ahead of the game. And then you would sit down in front of some people, usually a little more junior than the person deciding, and you pitch your story. You didn't need images, you didn't need soundtracks, you didn't need, and then sort of COVID came along and Zoom sort of rose up as the new way that people communicated. And so now that there are two different tracks for pitching. One is pitching to someone in a room verbally, and one is learning how to be a video producer, which is pitching over Zoom is a whole different dynamic, and you've got to learn different things, including look at the camera, don't look at the images of the people. But you also have to come up with a pitch deck, and you've got to come up with a lot of things. There was a recent article in the Ankler where a couple of showrunners were talking about what pitching has become today. And one of them said, instead of just sitting there telling a story, grabbing someone, letting them know how it's going to be saleable, they said it's now like asking an architect to build a 3D model of a building and fully decorate it. It's not just a blueprint or a sketch, it's the whole building. And so, the world having become a lot more competitive, a lot fewer shows being made, writers are definitely being asked to put a lot more into a pitch, to do a lot more free work, a lot more research. I have spent years on projects that are basically have-come things, but the pitch has become a much more polished thing, I think, and so there are different elements. I mean, I'll tell a quick story of pitching Scream, the TV series. So MTV and Bob Weinstein had gotten the Scream property, and they had worked with a bunch of different writers to try to develop it, and they had gone through all these things, like maybe it's technology-based, and there's a ghost in the machine, and it's more like Final Destination. And they ended up not liking any of these takes. And by the time they got to me, I basically came back around to, well, isn't Scream about a real guy in a mask? And they're like, well, I don't know, that sounds kind of fresh, because they just listened to like 6 people try and fulfill what they wanted. And I just came in and was like, the emperor has no clothes. And they're like, okay, cool. But when I had to pitch to Bob Weinstein, it was over Zoom, And I had already pitched to like 4 or 5 different people. And, my basic idea was it's Friday Night Lights where you're terrified the person you love is going to get killed. Because, a series is a longer experience than 90 minutes of a screen movie. So you've got to kind of play 3D chess. You're establishing characters. That character could be a victim or it could be a killer. And when it happens quickly in a movie, you just kind of go with it. But when you have to build it out into 13 episodes, you've got to fall in love with these characters. You've got to care not only if they live or die, but if they get asked to the dance, if they get humiliated, online, if all these things happen. And so while I was pitching to Bob, he was on the screen, and he kept writing things and handing it to his guy next to him, and I'm pitching my heart out, and I'm singing and jazz handing it, and as he's passing these things off, I finally am just like, record scratch. I'm like, Bob, excuse me, can you just, this is a little distracting that you're writing stuff down and handing it to your guys. Do you want to, tell me something? And he's like, oh, and he holds the Post-it up, and it says, effing fabulous. And I was like, all right, I'm glad I asked.
Yeah. Put you at ease.
But it was a very early sort of Zoom pitch, I guess. And with that one, it was really taking kind of the theme and the world that he was already very familiar with and introducing him to, here's how we're going to do it for TV. Here's how we're going to spread this out. And it's taking, the best of Friday Night Lights, the best of a great addictive CW show, and making it scream. And so with that one, I had a lot of established knowledge to work with. But I also, had to walk him through it. So it was an experience where I benefited from, unfortunately, the failures of some people before me, but it was also showing the timing was right, what I had to say was what they needed to hear right then. And I also gave the speech, the meta speech from the character who is your meta character. And I basically said, you can't do a slasher movie as a TV series, is what the guy says. And then he explains why you can't do it. And then in the pilot, I'm like, and we're going to do it all. And he loved that. He's like, okay, that's the new meta take on how you do Scream as a TV series. So.
Yeah, so that's great, and there's actually several things I kind of want to follow up on, but I have kind of a related anecdote that one of my more unusual jobs that I got was writing an animated pilot or a pilot for an animated educational show, and I got the meeting through someone I had worked with in my day job before I became a screenwriter. I happened to work at Disney Feature Animation in the technology department, and he said, hey, I talked to these guys, I thought maybe you could come in and pitch your take. I said, well, I don't really write animation. He's like, no, I think you could do this. So I came in and I pitched the take to the producer and the scientist who was kind of doing the science on it, and I got the job. And when they brought me back in, they were like, oh, we met with all these animation writers and they all basically pitched the same thing, and yours was so different. And I thought, maybe because I don't know what I'm doing, but maybe there's a lesson there of you don't do the obvious, right? All this stuff is competitive, even if it's a completely, your own original idea. They're still taking tons of meetings this week, and they're trying to decide what to work on and what to buy and what to invest an enormous amount of their company's money in and an enormous amount of their time in. So, don't do the obvious. Try to do something that kind of stands out and is interesting. Don't be boring, as the last panel said. So.
Or be fucking fabulous.
Yeah, be fabulous.
That's what you need to be.
Yeah.
Well, it's also that it's this idea of that you want to pitch them something where they just can't say no, right? That's the goal. They just can't turn it down. And if you walk in with that feeling of this is so good, you just can't turn it down, I think that starts to come across. The one thing I've seen writers who pitched great or good ideas, maybe border ideas, but they didn't walk in with confidence about, how good it was, and maybe, and then the question is, can you run this show if you don't fully know what you're doing, you don't feel fully confident, or you're sort of waffling in there. You have to walk in, this is great, you're going to love it, you can't say no. I mean, it's really, really important.
Yeah.
To jump on that for a second, like the confidence and enthusiasm seem to be everything. I mean, in life in general, right? But things are so insane now for pitching. Like in the previous panel beforehand, I won't repeat the story because it's not mine to repeat. But like I heard the most insane rejection about a very undeniable pitch based on a book with all the star talent attached. Like it's so insane right now. The story I told you earlier about my friend who wasn't going to go up for the show with the bank robbers not only speaks to white supremacy, but also it speaks to the fact that they're looking for things that are so specific that it's ridiculous. Like you will get passes on things for the most insane reasons. Like I heard earlier say, like after an amazing pitch and the network discussing it for 2 weeks and telling the writer, you didn't sell it yet, right? You didn't sell it yet, right? Because we're really interested. They're like, oh, the mythology didn't work out. And the writer's like, but that's what the pitch is for. We can talk about this and develop it. They're like, oh no, okay, bye. And like, it's ridiculous. And it's not to say don't try it, like, but just know, like, it's insane and random. And like hitting the people with what they need when they need it,
Yeah.
and being confident, and like all of these random things, right?
Yeah, this is not quite a rejection story or even really a pitching story, but about the specificity sometimes is like I had a spec script and a cable channel was apparently interested in buying a movie script, buying it as a TV movie. So my agent called me and said, hey, you know, this company's interested, but they want to know, can you put a bear in it? And I said, well, yeah, I think so, but like, do they have a famous bear they want a cat? I don't, why a bear? So,
Yeah, I think
you know, it's like
so.
that apparently they were looking for a bear movie? I don't know. So, and somehow, yeah, it's weird. Hollywood is weird. So, so let's see. So water bottle tour, I also wanted to come back to because that was very, very common for feature writers. And part of that is they want to meet you and find out if you're, you know, they read something of yours they like. They want to meet you, find out if you are crazy or someone they can work with, find out what other ideas you have. So we would do that a lot. And I assume it kind of happens in TV as well. There's obviously a lot of meetings in TV because for staffing and
It
everything.
used to happen in April.
Oh,
in May.
yeah. See, there was a season. There was a
There was a
staffing
season, and now they're like, oh, it'll be so great, we're going to go to year round. And now it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you can't plan your life around that. So, yeah, so there was that, and then I feel like pitching has changed, and Joe also mentioned the Zoom pitching. So I'm curious, Karen, any experiences about how pitching has changed, or
It's
new
much
things?
harder on Zoom. It's much harder because you don't have personal, oh, am I not? Sorry. It's much harder on Zoom because you don't have that moment where you walk into the room and you're all chatting and you're talking about, you know, whatever, the table or whatever it is. So for one thing, pitches have to be shorter on Zoom. That's what I found. You have to keep them, 15 minutes, 17 minutes, right?
Yeah.
In that range. And then you have to try to find some connection when you first get on, whatever it might be, just to sort of talk to, I'm a human, you're a human, you know, because they have so many of these, you're a little box on a screen during the day, and they see so many. So you try to find something to have a conversation about. And the deck, you have to have visuals and you have to make it fun. And the other thing is that I'll say is when you're in a pitch, if you screw up, because everybody screws up now and then, how you handle that screw up can make a difference, right? If you screw up and you are like, you freeze, that's not good. If you screw up and you're like, think I screwed that up, and then kind of make it fun or funny or somehow work through it so it shows you can handle pressure, that's actually a good thing. I think, though, you should maybe want to address how you get into a room with people, because you asked the question, and I'm going to give a really honest answer. Yeah. I think it's really, unless, if you have, even if you have an agent and or a manager, to get into a room as a first-time writer to pitch a series is hard, because you don't have a proven track record, and unless you have a spec script, it's going to be really tough. And one thing that people are doing now is, and then they've done before, is to partner with somebody, a producer or another writer or somebody who's well known, and bring their idea to that person, as opposed to going, straight to a network.
And most networks, to jump on that, like, won't hear you if they don't know you.
Right.
But a producer is always looking for material, so
Right.
you're more likely to get in that way.
Right, right. And so sometimes you try to find a writer, director, or just a writer, a TV writer or a producer who's worked in the genre that you want to work in. And if you can get your material to that person and they like it, then you walk in with a much more powerful package, right? It's the two of you, as opposed to just you walking into a room or over a Zoom. I think that's the main question where you want to know, right? How do I get through the door? So.
Yeah. Ken, as a former producer and executive, and thoughts on how does someone get through the door?
Back in the day, it was pretty much everyone who was represented by an agent or manager. It was very, very, very rare to ever have someone come and get through the front door. Not because it's impossible, because everyone who does the job that I used to do is really busy. And they don't have time to cull the countryside for unproven talent, right? You just, you kind of take what comes in the door, and just handling that workload is nearly impossible. That an answer? I don't know.
So, and I do feel like television, nothing is easy, I guess.
Let me just add one thing. I mean, I'm a little bit of the poster child for this. I've been a full-time screenwriter now for the last 6-7 years. I'm unrepresented. How did that happen, right? I've never had an agent. I've never had a manager. I've been working for 7-8 years. Why? Because I had some relationships in the entertainment industry that predated my existence as a screenwriter. So that is kind of the takeaway from this, is really you have to know somebody. It's not just a matter of having a relationship with somebody. They have to kind of trust you. They have to appreciate your talent. They have to be willing to put themselves on the line to represent that to somebody else. Because I'm telling you, man, if your best friend doesn't believe in your talent, they are not going to stick their neck out for you to somebody else. They just have to believe in you. So it's really important to get past that early stages and have the goods. Workshop your own ideas with your friends and learn to tell the difference between polite encouragement and genuine enthusiasm. Okay, there's a gigantic chasm between attaboy, right, attagirl, right, and where can I write the check? Right? Who do I write the check to? So I mean, really, when you probably someday, in hopefully all of your careers, there'll come a point when someone sees their own self-interest in your work, and that's the moment where you're like, oh, everyone was lying to me before, right?
I have a question, Ken, for that. Since you've been an exec and a producer for so long, you have a lot of connections, right? You have a lot of contacts.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the phrase is like, oh, Hollywood's about who you know, and it often sounds as a pejorative, but it really is about connections. Like, I can call up some executives, and they'll meet with me or hear me, but it's different to pitching-wise. For staffing, it's different. But pitching-wise, I could call and be like, hey, do you want to hear this new idea I have? And they'll say yes, because I know them. You have this relationship with them. And that's what is the key, I think, to getting in to pitch, is to have the relationship. You can use people in your Rolodex, right? And be like, hey, you want to read my new sample? I want us to get it out.
Yeah, everyone's looking for validation, some kind of validation. There's an old joke about the agent who calls up the studio executive on Monday morning and says, what did you think of the spec script I sent you? And the studio executive says, I don't know, I'm the only one who's read it. So that it's funny, but it's true, right? Everyone's looking for somebody else's validation. So, right, to have somebody come in, someone that person trusts, and say, hey, I read something, you really got to take a look at this, right? That's huge. And the person who's making that referral is not going to do it unless they really believe it, because it's their reputation on the line. If it sucks, right, that's going to reflect badly on them. So that's what I'm saying. Generally speaking, your best friend, I know they're my best friend, they're not going to help you unless they really believe in you. So you got to get past that. You got to know when that moment is and improve your craft and all that kind of stuff.
And then the kind of even more disheartening truth, I guess, would be that it's true of your agent too. Even after you get an agent, they send you into these rooms and you got to make them look good by being good yourself, which is one of the reasons it's hard to get an agent, because they need to make sure, that you're going to perform well in the room. Now, I'll give you the good news side of that, which is the people hearing the pitch, they're on your side, actually. It feels adversarial sometimes, but they're hoping you do a great job. That would be the best thing for their day, is wow, I just found the thing. I found the thing that I'm going to do next. That's what they want. They don't get it most of the time, but you shouldn't be scared of them. They actually want you to do well. And that makes me feel more relaxed anyway. Yeah, and I think one of the things with television, though, is like, you probably have to build a career in television before you get to run a show, wouldn't you say?
Yes, unless you've just won someone over with some big glossy idea, and then they'll call me and say, hey, this person had a podcast for the last 3 months, and can you bring your 25 years of experience and turn that into a TV series? No, I mean, there is a bit of the big, the shiny bauble that just graduated college element to it. Everybody also looking for IP, so like somebody who's done a podcast or a short film or a graphic novel, or, there's a lot of that. But I think a lot of writers are introverts, and I dislike pitching immensely because
Everyone does.
I am nervous and I'm shy and I don't want to do that. But, and there is that moment where in everything, no matter how many squares there are on the screen, they are all looking at you. And it's, it's like, it can be like the worst sort of anxiety dream, but it's something that I just turn into, that's when I go into this is the job. And so I will write out my pitch, I'll have it on cards, I don't have it verbatim, but I will walk around my neighborhood with my index cards, and I will just talk to the air, and I'm sure, my neighbors think I'm...
Here comes that crazy lady.
Yeah, here comes that crazy lady with the note card fetish. But I once
do it in my car.
Yeah, it's like whatever you get it down, and you don't have to look to see what's on the next card, then your pitch is ready. Because when you get in there and everybody turns to you, your adrenaline's going to start pumping, you're going to feel all those things that you feel naturally. But that's when it goes from being, oh, how fun it is to be a writer, to this is the job of being a writer. Yeah. I hate this part of it, but I'm good at it because I have to be. And so it's a very tough thing to pitch to a person, to a team of people, but that's when it's a career and a profession and a job, and not. Hopefully, you bring your passion to it.
Sure.
But you've got to do your homework.
You have to know how to be good in a room. You just have to. I mean, when I started, I thought, I'm just going to sit in my little room and type. I'll never see
We all
anybody. I'll be like Emily Dickinson. It'll be great. But the truth is, it really is part of the job. And maybe it's a part that you hate, but it's a part you're going to have to learn to do if you want to be successful.
I've come to like it, actually, pitching, and I was terrified when I first did it. The first time I pitched, I was terrified, and I memorized it, which is like the worst thing to do, because if you get interrupted, because an exec might come in, be like, oh, hey, start from the beginning, or just might come in to tell an exec something, then you're like thrown off. And also some execs think it's creepy that you can memorize 15 minutes of a story. Yeah. So I stopped doing that, because I basically was like, I got to prove to myself I can. But now, I script everything. I script my asides and my impromptu jokes that the audience loves. I script everything. When I used to go in, we were just talking. I used to go in on like 22 font on paper and double-sided, and I would go in a physical pitch. And I'd be like, "Don't worry, this is double-sided and it's 22 font. It's not that long." But now on Zoom, I put those faces in the back, like I don't see them. I don't care anymore. Like I know that you're all there, and I've got my document up, and I'm looking at the camera, and I'm so engaged, and I'm reading it because I know the pitch. Like I have practiced it, but I know it, and I got my finger on the mouse, and I'm scrolling, and I'm pitching it, and then like telling the story, and I'm doing all this stuff and pitching, and then it's over. And I'm like, oh, thank God. But like. There are different ways to approach it that work for you, but I think the thing on Zoom that I like is that you can really read from your script. But if you looks like you're reading from your script, then their eyes will glaze over, and it won't work for you.
On the flip side, though, the people listening to your Zoom pitch may be reading their email.
Yes.
So it looks like they're listening, but they're really just,
They're doing the flip
I'll
side.
meet you at the Korean spa in 2 hours. Oh, right, yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah, so we have about 10 minutes, so if there are questions, I will try to get to a few. You can come up to the mic. I will tell one quick story that maybe kind of ties several of the last points together, which is I've had one panic attack in my life, and it was during a pitch meeting. So, and I actually had to stop because I was like hyperventilating. I was like, wait, can I just start over? And they were like, yeah, sure, because they're probably thinking, don't have a heart attack in our office, please. So, and I started over, and I did it, and I got in my car, and my agent called me, and he's like, they loved you. And I was like, did they mention the panic attack? And he was like, what? And I said, no, just kidding, nothing happened. So they covered for me, right? But the fact that the agent got worried also was telling. So it's like, okay, don't do that again. But yeah, I don't memorize either just because I get stage fright and then I go down, but I like bullet point lists. I like to be in the room more than Zoom, but you got to work on that Zoom skill. So, all right, first question.
Hello. I just want to say thank you guys all for having this panel. This is amazing. I kind of want to riff off of what Jill was saying earlier about being an architect in a way where you have the blueprint, but then you have to also do like the set design stuff for it too. And I feel like that kind of talks a little bit about pitch decks as well. And I was curious if, one, what do you guys use pitch decks, and how important would you say is a pitch deck when it comes to doing your own pitches? Because it feels like, I mean, especially in this day and age when you're Zooming and stuff, it might be hand in hand, but I was just curious, like, what you guys' thoughts or weigh in on a pitch deck when you're using your pitches. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think providing visuals for the mood that you're going for, you know, when we were doing Shining Vale, we reference and pay homage to a lot of classic horror movies. So when we would do our pitch deck to pitch to the networks for give us another season, we would say, this is the Rosemary's Baby season. And so then we would start putting up images of like scenes that we were, you know, excited about. And, you know, you're tapping into, you know, it's like reading a picture book version of Harry Potter versus just reading the book. You're getting these great images. You're able to see like, oh, I could see that being on my network, and I could see people talking about it at the water cooler the next day. And so it's really just, for me, it's because I do a lot of horror and genre, it's just giving some dark, beautiful artwork and sparking their imagination of like, oh, okay, you've got the woods, but then you've got the woods as done with like, you know, fairies and wood sprites and you know, falling stars. And so it's for me, it's just an additional tool in your tool belt because it's a visual medium and it helps them picture it.
Can I broaden that out a little bit? Because decks are ubiquitous in the entertainment industry, and the purpose of a deck varies. I mean, for a series, for a feature, it might be different. For a documentary, it might be different. I mean, is it for another, your agent? Is it for a buyer? Is it, you know, the content is generally determined by who's receiving it. If you're trying to sell your independent movie, it might have stuff related to budget in there, right? So it really depends. But the important thing is that in terms of the content is it's directed by that, and also decks tend to add visual references for things that are harder to explain, right? And so the trap is don't clutter up a deck with a lot of irrelevant information, right? Think about what's hard to explain about your idea, and that's the thing that the deck should deliver, in addition to your pitch or your written document.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you very much for your time. When you were talking about the structure of a pitch, you mentioned kind of, especially at the end, the wrap up, and like that's the only time it gets kind of like salesy. How is that structured, or how is that generally approached? Like when you say salesy, in what way, or what are you trying to convey in that moment after you've told your story and gotten the log line through and kind of sold the world?
Oh, yeah. I just think for that moment, it's kind of like a recap. For me, like, when I've gone into pitches, usually with producers, so they're the ones who are like, hey, Spiro's been on these shows, and he's a great guy, and you love his pitch, and he's so cool, and this has got a really great take. Like, that's all the salesy stuff. Like, and I don't want to do that. Like, I think that we should just be able to walk in and be like, hey, I'm the writer. I'm going to tell you a really cool story. And that's what we're doing. But when you do, like, a recap at the end, for me, I'm usually like, and I had started with a personal connection at the top of the pitch. So at the end, I'm bringing back in the personal connection and I will expand it to like how it's relatable to today's times. So that way it just feels like a kind of like a coda, like, or an end cap to the beginning of the pitch is what I was.
Or how it can work with, if it's a specific, like a Netflix or something, how it can work with what they're either looking for or things that have been successful for them before, but here's kind of a new way to do it, or how it fits the 4 quadrants of Netflix, you know. It's a lot of times you have your basic pitch, but then you also, depending on where you're going into, you will then maybe take a little time to talk about how this could work with the rest of the stars line up. Like, this is going to be a great sort of Outlander companion or something. So it's just looking at their individual picture just for their information, but also to let them know that you're aware of who you're pitching to and that you're thinking about their needs in particular.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, in your experience, what is the ratio of yeses versus nos? And how much
Might want
does
to sit down for that
ratio
one.
change as you get better at pitching and have more projects under your belt?
Is it more than 1% yeses? It's hard to,
They are paid to say no, but they would love to say yes. But a lot of times the people you're pitching to, it's very, you know, it's a huge risk to say yes to something. So the percentage is not going to be great. You know, I've pitched probably 50 things, and I've, you know, made one show, and I've worked on a bunch of other shows. But it's, yeah, if you kind of assume that, I mean, here's the thing, it's very rarely you sold it in the room. But if you go in with the passion, if you go in with the, I mean, one thing I love to say with my passion projects is, I'm going to make this somewhere. You want to make it here? You know, and it's like, and if you've given this, you know, amazing pitch, and it's like, that's going to make them think about it. Like, oh, well, if I don't make this, maybe she'll make it someplace else. But no, it's a very rough road. It's not like running at a track meet where you know you're going to get first, second, third. You know, it's a real sort of lottery ticket to have a pitch lead to yes. But not impossible.
Sorry, I just want to kind of do a bad news, good news on this. One is, like, think about what you're asking of executives, right? To say yes, usually that's betting their job on your idea, right? Because if they say yes to the wrong things too many times, they will not be working. So it's a big ask. So your stuff, so that sort of a pitch of it has to be great. But my way of sort of psychologically dealing with that and a little bit of the stress is, I don't make my goal of a pitch to sell the thing I'm pitching. I make it to get another meeting with that person. So I want to show them that, like, I have good ideas, I can do a good pitch, I can flesh things out. This is not right for them, because often it has nothing to do with you or your pitch. It's just like, this is the wrong budget or the wrong genre or whatever for what they're looking for, and you don't always even know what that is. So I just kind of think, like, I just want to do a good meeting. And if it sells, great, that's a win. And if it doesn't, hey, my career's still going. So that's how I approach it.
Yeah, and they might think of you next time for something that comes to them where they're like, oh my gosh, she had such a great handle on this genre or the way vampires work, or, you know.
I would just add, just constantly be thinking of the elevator pitch. Constantly be thinking about, what can I say to that person when I walk out of the room, they can use to sell to the person above them. If you can make that really easy for them, I mean, you know, that's half the battle.
Okay, thank you.
You know that book I've been telling about that I've been out pitching, and with producers and everything, it was dead. And I say that too because, so these producers brought me a book. They're like, you're great for it. They actually paid me to come up with a pitch for it, just for the pitch, not for anything else. We had a showrunner attached. We took it out to probably 20 pods, like producers with overall deals. And then we decided that we would try to take it directly to studios. And we did several studios, and then we took it to all the major streamers. And this was over a year and a half that I worked on this, and the amount of money I got paid to do that does not
60 cents per
Yes.
hour about?
Yeah, like exactly. And executives were like, we talked about this for an entire week. This is such a great idea. We're going to pass. We think it's something we'd love to see but not make. I'm like, it doesn't help me, you know. But like, I've been taken to lunch. I've gotten follow-up meetings with the things that you're just talking about. I've got people who now want to read, execs who want to read my other material for consideration for shows or other development. To me, it all goes into like a pot. And, you just keep your pot boiling and you just keep putting more context into it and more wins. And if you get to pitch to an executive, that's a win. Like, most people don't pitch to executives. If you're getting a pitch in, that's the win itself. If it went well and they like you and they'll think about you in the future, that means it's a win. Because to sell it, like you're saying, like how many times do you pitch something and you sell it? It's very rare. I think one of the 3 scripts that I've sold was a pitch, and I pitched that to several places before that sold as well.
Yeah, so we only have like time for 1, maybe 2, so sorry. I will be out there, and maybe some of you will as well, to answer additional questions after, but please go ahead.
Thank you. I had so many questions, I'm going to condense it down into one and just kind of stick on this. It's really about attaching existing IP. So I'm a producer of a new series. We actually DIY'd this. My wife is writer, director of it. She brought me on as producer because I'm free, and she knew she could make me do it. We DIY'd it. It was very hard. I wouldn't recommend it. But fortunately, we were able to get distribution for this, and it's coming out June 1st on multiple platforms.
That's great.
So we're very blessed for that. But one of the challenges we had in getting in the room was it wasn't based on anything. It was too original, too new. And we actually had advice of, hey, why don't you go to WonderCon, find a comic book creator, have them create a comic book for it. Let's see how that IP does and performs, and then come back and we'll talk, because now it's existing. We don't know anything about comic books or how to be able to create a comic book. We thought that was going to be harder than just making it ourselves. So I'm glad we went the route we did. It was very hard because it wasn't attached to something existing. So my question for you is, when you're pitching or when you're out there putting out ideas, what is your success ratio versus attaching to existing IP or just fully new and original?
It's much easier to walk in a room if you have some kind of pre-existing intellectual property, much, much easier. I'm not saying that you have to have something that is Harry Potter, right? I mean, it has a worldwide audience. But, I think that there are a couple of advantages. One is that the thing somehow managed to exist in another medium is a kind of an inherent endorsement of that idea. Also, it's possible that even as minimal as it might be, there might be a pre-existing awareness of that. They might have fans, right? They might show up on Friday night, or they might chatter about it online, right? So there's all those that there are numerous possible benefits to that. And once again, it does not have to be household name stuff. Not the least of which is, oh, by the way, right, if you're not good at coming up with your own ideas, right, some kind of pre-existing content might help you get past that hurdle. The only other thing I was going to add is that, I'm not going to add it, so we don't have time.
Yeah, so sorry, we gotta stop. I would just say one thing, a warning of, like, it's very easy for producers to tell you, go create a comic book, go create a book, go create a play. That's not easy to do. So it's easy for them to ask you to do free work. So that's just something. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. Thank you to my panel. I will be out there.